Good day there once again, viewers. Your mate Kamikaze78 here, and today guys, you can probably tell this is going to be a slightly different video based on the face cam and, you know, just the fact that this is going to be actually an unscripted video. I've got a few dot points ahead of me, but, you know, this is for the most part a completely unscripted video. So guys, the Briggs Server. To all those who've been watching me on Twitch for a while now, you'll know that this video was most certainly coming. But essentially guys, I want to talk about the Briggs Server today and talk about how I want to see the treatment of characters on that Briggs Server get handled, because quite frankly, the Briggs Server to my mind is no longer a Planetside 2 experience, and therefore I want my characters off that server, and I want a way in which I can still enjoy Planetside 2 with the characters that I've spent hours upon thousands of hours grinding on Briggs, but still get a true Planetside 2 experience, because right now I can't do that, and quite frankly it, you know, impacts my enjoyment of the game. I do want to grind up my characters again, yes, but, you know, having the ability to use my fully leveled, fully kitted out characters would be nice again, and it also impacts me as a content creator. I can't make content for you guys as quickly as I used to be able to, especially my loadout challenge videos, because, you know, I simply don't have the gear anymore, and that's the rough part about it. But for argument's sake, let me list off a couple of stats here for Briggs. Essentially, population is now at an all-time low. We essentially get 58 average players over 30 days. Now that number comes from the average amount of players that are on the server, you know, 24/7 over 30 days. Now 58 players, when you balance out, you know, the lows and the highs, may not seem so bad for an oceanic server for a massively multiplayer online video game. But then you look at Connery, which has recently had a huge population sink due to the launch of the Soltech server, all the Asian people going off and playing on that server instead, well, at least to my mind that's what they're doing. You know, they get an average of around 348 people. Can you see the difference there? Like, even though a server that is, I think Connery is probably the least populated server besides Briggs, has had that much of a dip in population, has still got that much population going for it after the dip that has come from the lacking amount of Asian presence there now, it's safe to say that Briggs is definitely not in a good state of mind. To give you an idea, 58 average players is less than what it takes to fill an entire Battlefield game. Battlefield games are held on a much smaller map too, keep that in mind. In a peak, we see an average of about 80 players per faction, which equates to around about 240 people, and that's only enough for one 40 vs 40 fight per faction against each other faction. So you're essentially getting one 40 vs 40 on each front line on the map. That to me isn't Planetside 2. That is, you know, that's three slightly larger games of COD being fought over a large 64 square kilometer map. That is, of course, assuming that everyone wants to fight in that area and no one wants to go off and simply ghost cap. And you know my opinion on ghost capping, that's not Planetside, it's not what the game is about. That, to me, simply isn't Planetside 2 at all. In fact, that is just an upscale battlefield. It's 3 battlefield matches being held across a 64 square kilometer map that take forever to get to, and if one fight ends and a population decides to fuck off and fight the other faction another time and double team something, then one faction is left without a fight to fight on, and they're left ghost capping towards the enemy warp gate and doing nothing really else, really. That's not an MMO FPS, that's an MMO, but it's a grinding MMO where you stand around a capture point for 4 minutes at a time, simply twiddling your thumbs and hoping for the best. That's not an MMO FPS, you know? An FPS is a shooter. I expect to shoot things in an MMO FPS, and if the population on Briggs doesn't, you know, stick to this 40 vs 40 vs 40 vs 40, like these 3 separate fights on 3 separate front lines, then you get a very, very boring dynamic for one faction. And then you see one faction become horribly underpopped, and then it becomes a server stomp, and it's not fun. It's not the Planetside 2 experience at all. Like, you know, again, it's not this, you know, Planetside 2 advertises that's all about these massive open warfare, you know, multiple fronts of battles occurring across 3 different factions. That's not Briggs anymore. It's an upscaled Battlefield game across massive maps with 3 different matches occurring at once. Again, that's just instanced battles on different bases. That's not massive open-scale warfare. And, you know, in my opinion, that will never change for Briggs. We will never see the population on Briggs grow, and here's why. No matter what kind of advertisements you do for Briggs, or no matter what kind of advertisements you do for the game, it's always going to be a matter of expectation versus reality for Briggs. Like, you know, we could say that, you know, Planetside 2 has got DX11. We could say there's a new faction in the game, and players might start trickling back into the Briggs server once in a while, but they're going to see how low the population is, and they're going to see, you know, the trailers for Planetside and, you know, these massive open scale warfare, and then they're going to see Briggs itself and go, well, shit, this isn't Planetside 2. This isn't the Planetside 2 I heard about. Maybe the server's dead, and then they're just going to piss off. It's a free-to-play game. Players, after they, you know, download the game, have no incentive to stick around because they haven't made an initial investment. That's the double-edged sword of a free-to-play game. You know, it's really easy for your player to download the game and give it a go. It's very difficult to keep them locked in if they don't enjoy the initial experience because they don't feel the need to satisfy their money's worth of investment because they haven't done such a thing. And Planetside 2 for Briggs just isn't Planetside 2, so they're going to come in, they're going to see the reality versus their expectations, and they're going to call the game dead and just leave. Like, they're just going to leave outright. And we would need to see a huge swell of population all at once. We'd need to see some old veterans and a butt ton of new people to join the game all at the one time to revitalize the Briggs community back into the numbers it needs, become enjoyable for the new player. And right now that just isn't possible. I don't see that ever happening. I don't see a huge swell of players coming back into the game at the same time unless we see a relaunch of Planetside 2, and that's not going to happen. Not doing anything about the server, and by holding a server out that doesn't completely complete the experience of what Planetside 2 is all about, you completely negate a potential player base for the game. You completely say that you're basically saying that these guys aren't going to get the experience and therefore they aren't going to stick around. That is the, you know, the cut and dry of the entire situation. And I've heard the argument made that Briggs is a community of, you know, cash whales. You know, we have the highest capita per server or per population on any server of Planetside 2. And, you know, that's an argument to make, sure, but you know, you could have a server with one player out there who is a premium member that buys the entire arsenal of weaponry, and you'd still have the highest capita per population because the one guy who is on the server is investing in the game. That's a 100% capita per population, so of course that stat is going to be the highest. That's going to make the Briggs server look like it's making a lot of money. The Briggs population just looks like it's generating more because it's got 50% of the server population contributing to the game actively on average. So, you know, it's not ever like, you know, the population on Briggs may be resembled as being the highest capita per player, but it's really just, you know, to my knowledge, that argument is completely irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. So, obviously, you know, after all this ranting, you guys would probably expect a solution from me, and I have a very simple... The way I see it, Connery players are being allowed to transfer their characters between Connery and Soltech in December. You know, all power to them. There's a lot of Asian population on that server. That's perfectly fair enough. The way I see it, Briggs population should be allowed to do the same. You know, we've got a lot of Asian players who play on that server regularly. We've also got, you know, a lot of people out there who can connect quite easily to the Asian server from the Australian mainland. So why the hell aren't Briggs populations being given the same opportunity? You know, it only makes sense. And, you know, some people will argue that if we are given that opportunity, then the Briggs server will well and truly die. Well, my answer to that is maybe that's what it's meant to be. Like, don't hold a bunch of characters who could be earning you a lot more money and could be renewing memberships if the servers were able to be transferred, and if, you know, if players were able to jump into a Planetside 2 experience that was actually Planetside 2 again, and, you know, they were given that opportunity, maybe you'd start making more money again than, you know, have a bunch of cash whales who play on this Briggs server who are, you know, enjoy the smaller scale fights, and all power to them, that's perfectly fine. But if they enjoy the small scale fights and are, you know, being very loud about, you know, keeping the server up, you could be making a lot more money by allowing those who play on the Briggs server but prefer the large scale battles of Planetside 2 to transfer a character to a server that has those sorts of battles and can facilitate those sorts of battles. I think you'll see a higher profit margin. I'm being completely honest there. And, you know, all good things, or most good things I should say, are not great because they last forever. You know, the Briggs server has had its run, and it's had a great run at that. The Briggs community has been one of the best Planetside 2 communities out there, I think. We were the underdogs in the server smash, and we won, you know, a couple times in a row. We had an undefeated history. But, you know, all good things must come to an end, guys, and quite frankly, I think this is Briggs server's time. whether that be through allowing people to transfer off the server and then, you know, having the population dwindle down that way, or just by shutting the shit down and moving characters to either Connery or Soltech. Like, I want to enjoy this game more with my characters that have, you know, seen Battle Rank 100. But I can't do that because my characters are locked onto a server that doesn't resemble the Planetside 2 experience, and that server will never ever resemble that Planetside 2 experience ever. Bloody hell, guys. Look, that had to be said. This is a video that I've been wanting to do for a very long time. I've been thinking about, I've been thinking about what to say and how to say it, and, you know, time was time. And I would love to see Briggs, you know, come back from the dead and that community, you know, have a huge population come back. But quite frankly, guys, 248 people is not an MMO when it's on a 64 square kilometer map. That's not an MMO. MMOs of thousands of people on one server, and that's not what we're getting here. I mean, sure, even most servers don't reach thousands, but they at least reach plus 500, which is enough to populate a 64 square kilometer map with enough people to have a varied amount of fights. So guys, on that note, that concludes today's video. I'm sorry if I rambled on a bit more, but clearly this has been a long time coming. I want to see things change, and I'm hoping we do get around to that in the future very, very shortly. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, backhand the like button, and if you're new here, backhand that subscribe button whilst you're at it. I'd really appreciate it. And I hope to see you guys all in a future video. Take care, look after yourselves, and I'll see you guys in the next one. See you guys, have a good one.